In this video, I'm gonna break down my first impression of Waylay, the newest Valorant agent that got introduced to the early access today, and it's gonna be released in 2 days on the ranked servers, or 3 days. Anyway, my point is, I'm gonna talk about what I think about Waylay when it comes to ranked, pro play, and how does the utility work. Let's go. Today's episode is sponsored by Elgato. Go to elgato.com for the newest hardware for streamers. If you already know what the utility pieces do, you might skip to the next chapter, which is gonna be my first impression. If you don't, stick around and I'll explain to you everything. The first utility piece is called Saturate. It's a grenade that costs 300 credits. It affects with hindered. It's something that affects your movement speed, fire rate, recoil reset, reload, and essentially makes you less efficient at... It's kind of like a stun, but not exactly. So it shares the trajectory with the Fade Molly, rather Fade Seize, and Phoenix Molly. So if you know already line up for that stuff, you will feel at home with this. But the most important fact is that this is different from stun because I feel like it's easier to counter. Because what you want to do when you're being under this effect is you want to just crouch and just shoot with ADS. And you're gonna be almost fully accurate. You just need to shoot a little bit slower. And remember that your opponents are gonna be full speed. Only you are being affected by it. But as you can see, you can outplay this even more than a stun. So easy to avoid, right? Crouch and ADS if you want to counter it. The range of it is 30 meters. If you look at head level, it's gonna have 30 meters. If you look up, it's gonna have range of 25 meters. So just pay attention to that. The second utility piece is called Lightspeed. It's your dash. It costs 300 credits, so it's not a signature when you compare it to Jet. And so overall your kit is 600, which is not super expensive, but you will only have it once in your round because there's no way of getting it back. Now, difference from Jet is that you just equip it. You don't have to activate it. You just equip and now you can use it. And you can use it only once per round. So left click allows you to double dash. It's always the same interval between the dashes. You cannot really change it. There's a difference between the first and the second dash because the first dash can go upwards, but the second dash is always forwards, and it cannot really change your verticality anymore. Now you can change fully the directions though, like this, for example, but that's about it. Now the dashes are 9 meters each. So you're gonna end up very close after the one dash. The right click allows you to dash once, but it's essentially almost the same range as the left click. Because if I do the left click, I stop here. But if I do the right click, I stop here. As you can see, there's a difference of like 10 centimeters. So what's the reason for the right click? Just if you don't want to lose more time to double dash. But you can, if you right click, it's a vertical dash, so you can choose where to go. Now, the problem with this utility is that equip time is horrendous. If I do a double dash, this is the fastest I can shoot after being out of the dash. I don't have support like Jet with her own smoke, so I'm being exposed for a very long duration when I dash and try to shoot. And that is a big problem. The best play that you can do with the dash is essentially just dash just behind someone and try to not die during that moment. Without support, it's very hard to do anything with this dash, in my opinion. And now the signature is called Refract. You get it back after 2 kills. And what does it do? Well, it activates it to a spot. And now, after the activation, after 1 second, you have an 8-second duration when you can just go forward and then press E and you TP back to the spot that you activated it from. So overall, you have 9 seconds to use this utility after pressing E. The problem is, well, there's actually a lot of problems, but the most important thing is that when you activate it, you stop seeing what you see in the game. As you can see, that you can see the enemies. There's nothing that you will know. You cannot scout with it. You just change your position, and you cannot be shot when doing that, but people will see you doing it, right? So it actually doesn't really give you much as a signature. Because essentially, on attack, you will try to combine this with a dash, go somewhere, dash it, try to do something, and then go back to the position that you started from. On defense, you might start using this as a operator mechanic to get out after you shoot, because that's actually possible. But again, the window is even shorter than the jet dash, right? So you go out, you shoot, you TP back, and you essentially not get traded anytime you do it. But overall, I see a problem with this utility that I will describe in a moment. And now the ultimate called Convergent Paths. So what you do is you set up a AoE stun or the AoE hindrance. So you get an after image. This is the area of it, very similar to Teho ultimate essentially. And now all those people are affected by your grenade. This is essentially the effect. That's what you get. But this time you don't have to put them in the range of your grenade to have this effect, and you can do it through walls, which is pretty powerful. You also get a speed buff, exactly the same way like a steam beacon does for the player, right? So you move faster, but you don't get the fire rate buff, reload, or equip time buff, which is a big problem because when you ult and now you try to dash, you're not gonna start shooting faster, right? But the ultimate is pretty powerful because the effect is pretty good. People get definitely like, you know, confused by it. So it's still a decent ultimate. The problem is that it does exactly the same thing that the grenade does, right? You have the same effect. So you achieve half of the things already with the grenade and you don't really get much more value out of it when it comes to the ultimate. Remember also that something that you do, I'm gonna press forward while doing this ultimate, or actually I'm gonna press right strafe while doing this ultimate. You're gonna see a freeze frame. That is how it works. You are getting stunned by a moment when you do this. See, I stopped moving for a moment because that's the moment when the after image is being placed. So it's a little bit awkward when it comes to that. Now let's talk about the actual first impression that I have, and I feel like there's gonna be a lot of problems, question marks, and actually head scratching when it comes to this agent. So I have this file called Compendium that I like to update with new agents and assign them roles and so on, because I do think that the word duelist doesn't really mean anything. It's all about what is the primary role of an agent. And when it comes to Waylay, I assigned the role of a space creator / zoning as a primary role for the agent, similar to Raze, similar to Neon, and to some case similar to Jet because of the space creator. The zoning is added because of the utility that typically affects a certain zone of the map during an execute and so on. So in this case, that's the grenade. Now the problem is that even though the primary role of Waylay is exactly the same as Neon and Raze, and the Crosshair Disruptor is the second role because of the dash, and you try to like disrupt players standing on site, right? So they cannot hold a headshot level and they have to flick. The problem is that the character itself, Waylay, doesn't have something that the other characters have. So when you compare it to Jet, she has 2 smokes that she can dash to increase the odds of not dying while doing the space creation, which makes sense. That's why it's such a good design, right? That's why it's so overpowered as well, right? Then we have Neon, who serves exactly the same roles with the stun and the dash, but she has a wall that creates a little bit of a similar position like Jet, where she can hide in that wall or deny the amount of angles that will hold her while doing that space creation. Now, Raze can have a info bot and one angle being completely checked by paint shells, and then the satchels themselves give you much more freedom when it comes to the movement that you will do, and can actually be way further like distance than anything else, or it can be just short distance depending on how one you want to use it. So you have flexibility. So it's also hard to kill you because of the flexibility. Now, Waylay doesn't have any of that. Her only dash that you can use is very limited. It's always the same distance, right? Because it's always, the dash is like always 9 meters. Doesn't matter if it's 1 dash or 2 dash, and it's always in the same interval. So once players will actually know how she works, it's gonna be incredibly easy to predict which distance she's gonna end up after seeing the first dash. There can be some deaths because of, you know, someone dashes once and then he starts gonna shoot you, but Waylay doesn't have the utility piece to increase the odds of living in that position because you have no smoke, no wall, or no flashes. That's another thing with when you compare it to Yoru. Yoru can also be like space creator agent that TPs on a site, but he has the ability to help himself with the flash. Again, Waylay doesn't have that. I don't think the grenade that she has is flexible enough to make sure that you can support yourself. You can do it before you dash, but it's like so weird, like the way that you have to set up your utility doesn't feel fluid. If you throw the grenade first and then you dash, it's like always a little bit off timed. You're either too early or too late. The biggest problem of this agent, 100% the biggest problem of this agent, is that your equip time of the gun after your dashing takes ages. To illustrate this problem, well, let's try the dash, and it's always gonna be the same timing. This is the fastest I can shoot. Like, the time between this and the ability to shoot is so long, you have to be mobile when doing that. So I dash, I move, and then I start shooting. Otherwise, you're always dead. Now, I do think that's a problem. I do think that the lack of self-sustain from this agent is gonna be an incredibly frustrating experience for players in ranked, but also overall in team play, like an actual pro match. There's no point on choosing this agent if you have the competition. The competition being Jett, Raze, Yoru mainly, and to some degree Neon. Now, why on earth would I use this agent then? Maybe for defense. Maybe that's when she's better, right? Maybe on defense I'm able to utilize like an operator, so we can play, aggressive angles and then TP back, because that's her signature ability. Now, the problem with that is that your signature ability is only set up for essentially 9 seconds. So you can hold an angle with an operator for 9 seconds, TP back. And it's not even that far away from you, right? So the off angle is not really that big of an advantage from the point that you're gonna have to dash backwards to. Now let's compare that to the other agents who are great at using the operator. Chamber. Imagine the Chamber TP would have only lasted 10 seconds. And completely ruins the character. Obviously, Waylay has other avenues, but it's like if you were trying to find value in using the operator, it's very limited. Jett can stand in an angle that is an off angle for the majority of the round, then activate the dash, and then has 12 seconds to dash away. And she doesn't have to, like, look, if I'm a Jett, if I'm standing in a position that compromises me, right, but I have still some cover, then I can activate the dash and dash away from that position. If I'm Waylay and I'm standing behind compromised position, I cannot just press E, go out and go back, because I'm still in the same position. Because you can only have one direction of that signature recall move, right? So you're not better than Jett. You're at operating. You're not better than Chamber. You're not better than Yoru, because Yoru is similar to this character to some degree, but your TP is active for 25 seconds and you can move it in almost any direction as well, so you can reposition very fast and also very far away. So it's like completely, like, it's not even close, right? You can compare it maybe like, okay, maybe she's better than Raze. Actually, I would say that probably not, because Raze has double satchels that can change the verticality for only 200 credits. And also you can reactively use the satchels to change your position after shooting that operator. Like if you just spam double satchel, like by double satchel, I mean the double keybind of the satchel, you instantly explode and you move. So she's really not a great agent at using the operator as well. So we end up with a duelist that has two abilities do essentially the same, which is the grenade and the ultimate. They achieve the same effect, just in different area of effect. And then we have two abilities, the other two abilities, that are similar fashion. One is recall to a point of your origin, and the other one is just an aggressive dash that has very bad equip time. So we don't really have a lot of, let's say, possibilities of how to use this agent, because it's so one-dimensional. And the biggest upside of using this agent should be the dash, like the ability to be unpredictable in a way, but ends up being predictable because of its limitations. Now, do I think that's a problem? I don't think that's a problem. We already have too many duelists, and there are too many of duelists are being, on the top of the food chain. That's another thing that I feel like is a problem with Riot, is that we are consistently nerfing the characters that are meant to support others, but are consistently buffing the agents that are meant to be self-sustained. So this duel is not being self-sustainable. Maybe it's actually good for the game. Because if this agent would be overpowered, we would end up with another batch of insta-lockers and would just end up with Jett, Reyna, Clove, and Waylay being insta-locked in every game. Now, this might actually still happen, by the way, specifically at the beginning of the Waylay's life cycle, because her first impression that someone who didn't try it in an actual server might be, oh wow, she's overpowered. I wouldn't be surprised if that's gonna be the case. But I do think she's lackluster. I do think at a professional level, there's no way she's gonna get that much of a use. She can only be used as a secondary duelist. That's my opinion. Like, she is a good pairing with a good Jett. If a Jett player plays with Waylay and the Jett player uses 2 smokes and they go with the dashes to those 2 smokes, right? Then that's gonna be a good combo. But why on earth would you like to play another Jett that is weaker than the first Jett if instead of the Waylay, you could use an actually good agent? Like a Raze, like a Yoru, you know? Like, you can actually have a really flexible and well-rounded agent instead of Waylay, who seems to be missing a crucial part of her kit. She needed like a 5th utility piece, essentially, right? And also remember that Waylay doesn't get the dash back. It's a one and done. It's 300 credits. You're not getting a second one during a round. This is not Jett that will get another dash after 2 kills, right? Your ultimate also doesn't give you a free gun or like an ability to definitely try to get like an isolated kill or something. So yeah, I'm a little bit flustered about this agent overall. So my verdict is probably this agent that won't see a lot play. She might be picked at the beginning of a life cycle in ranked. At a pro level, I think the teams will not sacrifice a lot of time into this agent at all. It requires too much work for not getting too much done. And that's a problem. You don't want your agent to feel like it's hard work to get any value out of it. We already have an agent like that, and it's Yoru. But it's worth it because the agent is so flexible and so well-rounded, right? That's the agent that requires a lot of work, but the final execution is so worth it, it's worth sacrificing the resources and the time to master the agent. I don't think it's going to be the same with Waylay, and because of that, players will not even attempt because they're going to see very diminishing results in terms of the time spent when it comes to mastering this agent. Hopefully, that will mean that she will get a buff. But I say hopefully, but I'm not really hopeful because I don't want this agent to be overpowered. I don't want this agent to be like running circles around people. If she would get an buff to the equip time, that's gonna be a huge problem. Because then double dashing above people, jumping behind them and just like using a judge in their backs, that's gonna be overpowered. So she cannot really get a buff on the equip time because it will make it too frustrating to play against and too effective to play against. That's why she needed that 5th piece of the kit, which would be something to hide in after that dash. Now, yeah, I don't, this is not a guide itself, so it's just like my first impression. Hopefully you guys will learn a little bit from this video, and if you have any questions, leave me a comment. Bye-bye! If you like this kind of educational content, make sure to subscribe to the channel. It really helps a ton for me to create more content like this. And if you have any questions, make sure to leave a comment. I always reply to every single one of them.